Back here on First Things First, now joined by former head coach Eric Mangini. Hey, Coach.
What's up, Coach? Good to see you, brother.
Good to see you. Big story this morning, Coach. Eli Manning, Big Blue, making the long-awaited decision to finally bench Eli in favor of their future. 6th overall pick, Daniel Jones. Eli helped the Giants win 2 Super Bowls since taking over as the team starter in 2004. But now Daniel Jones will get his first career start on the road against the Bucs. Coach, what was your reaction when you heard the news?
I wasn't surprised by it because there's extreme pressure to play a player when you draft him that high. It's just, why? Well, why are we doing this now? And you look at the first 2 games, and it's Eli's fault. I mean, it's just Eli's fault. The defense is, what, 27th in yards allowed or 28th in yards allowed, 29th in points allowed, and they run the ball, what, 11 times the first game? As you look through, the receivers have been hurt. So what's the thought process? Is this just a function of we need to create hope, or is this a function of this is what's best for the young quarterback moving forward? Are they saying that the problems the Giants have are strictly Eli? Are we going to address any of the other problems that they've had, or we're just going to put it all on him? What's the end game here? They think that by inserting him, it's going to change the dynamic of the whole organization. It doesn't feel like it was well thought out. It feels like it was a function of we've drafted him high, we're feeling pressure externally to change something, so we're going to change this. And it doesn't make
ironic
sense.
Since they stayed with him for so long, despite all the outside
Coach,
pressure.
what if it's a function of 38 and 59 over the last 7 years with him as the starter? And it was, I believe this came too late, not too early. I think they would have been far better served to do this in the offseason. To tell Eli, listen, we can save $17 million by releasing you. We have taken a quarterback number 6 overall. You've had an unbelievable run. You're the greatest quarterback in Giants history. It is time to move on. Once they start the season with him, I agree. I thought he would have gotten at least 4 games. I had pinned 6 games is when I thought they would move on from him. But Eli has clearly been done as, forget a force multiplier, he has been a force divider for a number of years now. And so you're right, there are a ton of other issues with the Giants. But I imagine he's not the only player that was starting that's now no longer starting. I mean, he's not the only player that could be switched out. He's just the most notable one. I don't think it's the Giants should be criticized here for doing it this early. I think it's more so they did it this late after claiming, by the way, he's got a couple, maybe 2 good years left, and that we weren't watching the film.
Well, you've got a once-in-a-generational talent, their words, right, that you run the ball 11 times with in your first game. A once-in-a-generational talent that you run the ball 11 times in the first game if you're trying to protect your quarterback who doesn't have his receivers. You trade away a receiver for whatever reason after you pay him a ton of money, so you eat up that salary cap space, and then you bring back this quarterback and you're paying him $17 million, and you're going to use him for 2 games? So if you feel like he's done, okay, and you're going to draft the player that you draft, yeah, okay, maybe you move on. But you jerry-rigged the whole preseason to make sure that young guy is as successful as possible against backups. It's going to be a little bit different now. And maybe this will be the cure-all. Maybe it will. But at some point, you got to take accountability in other areas of the team, as opposed to just keep dumping it on this guy and saying, well, he's the answer.
I just want some consistency, because both of you can be right. Nick said, yeah, he should have been benched a long time ago. Yeah, but once you start with training camp, you've made your decision. He hadn't done anything in the 2 weeks that would bench him. So you're just inconsistent on your messaging, and you're going to lose your locker room, because Eli got a bunch of guys in that locker room, and they're watching the film. So now you come to him, you say, well, Eli's not the only guy getting benched. Well, typically, you can justify it on the film, though. The coaches come in, they bring you in, they sit you down, they show you a number of plays that you didn't perform well at. I don't believe the Giants can do that and not do that to the rest of the guys that are starting. So it does send a mixed message to the locker room. And to me, Gettleman, very, very questionable how he's managed his whole tenure as the general manager, because constantly he's lied to me. And if Barkley is who he is and who I think he is, after 2 games, oh, he should have 50 carries, at least. Like, you should put everything offensively, especially with your wide receiver injuries and your suspension. It should have been on Barkley in week 1 and week number 2.
And when you look at the numbers from last year, he sacked it 7% of the time. And then what was it, the mollywogs or whatever they call the offensive line there? You know, that was the part of the issue, but also the issue was Eli, right? It was it's transferring the problems all to him, as opposed to taking a step back and saying, okay, here's the different areas that we can fix, and here's the long-term solution that we have at quarterback. Is this the best thing for Daniel Jones right now, to go in week 2 and play, or is this just a pressure reaction to the fact that they're 0-2 and they want to keep people coming to the games?
So if they didn't do it in the preseason or in the offseason last year, whenever, how do you think the Giants should have handled it? When do you think would have been the
Once they started the year with Eli, how many games would you have given him?
Well, Chris makes a great point, because we don't know the reads that Eli had. So maybe looking at the game, he missed a bunch of wide open receivers, which I find hard to believe.
Yes.
And maybe Daniel Jones at practice is lighting it up, but he's only lighting it up versus show team. So what is the compelling information that you have to push it forward? And to me, it's got to be compelling. It's got to be a function of Saquon Barkley, we've maximized what he can do. The game plan, we've maximized what the game plan can be. Defensively, we've addressed the problems that we've had, or we're making changes to try to fix it. And we've done all those things, but it still comes back to the fact that Eli's not performing. And that's the point where you say, now we make the transition to the young guy because he gives us a better chance. But you do want to, what happens if Daniel goes in and gets blown up? What happens if it's really bad?
Oh, it's going to get worse.
Yeah, he got, like, ideally he goes in and lights it up and everybody's excited about it. But if he goes in and struggles or gets blown up, do you take him back out?
No, you can't.
Week 8 and put Eli back in?
You can't. Listen, you can't bench Daniel Jones unless he gets hurt, of course. Now, you've made the decision. I think, but I say that assigning a level of logic to the Giants organization they have not displayed. To me, their big mistake, I'll say it again, was done months ago. Once you decide, we're not taking the pass rusher from Kentucky, Josh Allen, we're taking Daniel Jones at number 6, you have made the decision. He is your starting quarterback to end 2019, no matter what Gettleman tells us. Oh, Eli's got 2 good years left. He didn't have 2 good games left, according to them. But once you make that decision, then you have to have the hard conversation. Greatest offensive player in franchise history, we are sorry, we are severing ties. That $17 million that you could have saved against the cap, maybe you keep Olivier Vernon. Maybe you, or if you still want to trade him for Kevin Zeitler because you need offensive line help, maybe you don't trade away Odell. Maybe you go into this season saying rookie quarterback, stud running back, stud wide receiver, upgraded offensive line, let's go. But I do agree with you in this regard. Once you say Eli's our guy, to give him 2 games makes it feel like you were just waiting for the first chance to pull the ripcord, which should have been back in March, in my estimation.
But you give him 2 games with a depleted receiver core,
yep,
and you don't even maximize the one guy that you say is the most talented player on your team. And at that point, it is what you said. It's what's our excuse to put the other player in? And Washington's going to face similar decisions here soon as to when they make the transition. But is it what's best for the player, or are you just reacting to external pressure because you're uncomfortable? Because you're uncomfortable with your current situation, are you really making the best decision long-term for the organization?
One thing I don't like about the inconsistency between Gettleman and the owner. The owner said, well, what if Daniel Jones doesn't play this year? He said it'd be a great year.
Great year.
It'd be a great year if he didn't play. Well, then you should have went with the Kansas City model. Remember that with Patty Mahomes? All right, Alex Smith was playing. They made the tough decision. All right, we're going to sit Patty Mahomes, even though we feel like he's got tremendous talent. Let's see him at the end of the season. And then they moved on from Alex Smith. The Giants chose to do something different. And who's telling the truth there? Every time Gettleman opens up his mouth, I feel like I'm being lied to.
Yeah, it's like when you fire an offensive coordinator after week 1 of the season. What did you know after week 1 that you didn't know all through training camp? And 2 games in, it just seems early.
All right, we got to take a break. We'll talk more about this, but coming up, will protecting Tom Brady be a serious issue for the Patriots this season? That's next on First Things First.